Welcome to the Data Playbook podcast. It's a podcast for data leaders to build a data playbook to get more value from data. We do that through a series of interviews with other data leaders, data experts, and data practitioners. I'm the host, Kris Peeters. I'm the CEO of Dataminded, and today I have with me Amaury.
Thanks for having me, Kris.
Welcome. Amaury, before we dive into the topic, can you introduce yourself? What's your background?
Yep. So my name is Amaury. I'm an electromechanical engineer originally. I live in Switzerland, 2 small kids, and then I'm the founder of a startup called River Solutions.
All right. And what's your background?
So I spent many years in a leading consulting firm. First as a consultant, and then as a leader in the product and technology area in different practices, healthcare, mobility, consumer goods. So through all this, I was always building data solutions. And in general, I'm passionate about data, software, and then helping people get better at what they do as well.
Awesome. And so now you decided to create your own startup. You left the cushy consulting job.
Yes.
To start River Solutions.
Yep.
You must be a bit crazy. So why did you start River Solutions, and what is the problem that you try to solve?
Yeah. So I must be a bit crazy. Many people have told me that actually in the past months. So it started from an observation, right? Like many years in consulting and in other positions. I've seen that people were building models, data models, right? Not the fancy ones, but actually the smaller ones. There was actually 99% of the models being built. And in organizations of all kinds, you build a model very frequently to support a decision. So you have like a big decision to make as an organization. It could be, are we going to launch a new product? Are we going to build new hospitals? All kinds of decisions. And these models are built by analysts in many different positions. And then very often they don't get any support from engineers. And so they default to the tool they know to build these models, which is Microsoft Excel.
Yeah.
And then as soon as they try to build a model, it grows more complex. And then when it grows beyond like 5 to 10 worksheets and many formulas, nobody understands a thing about it anymore. And it's typically full of errors.
Yeah.
So I've observed that many times. I've tried many solutions with other tools or more fancy code-based solutions. But every time it kind of failed or it was very hard. So I was like, okay, I need to find a solution to this now.
Well, as you know, I've also been in consulting, and I've seen those horrible Excel models. The solution, or why they usually come to me for that, is can we get it out of Excel and let like the proper engineers build it, right? So why is that not the obvious answer to your problem?
Well, it is the answer in many cases, right? But then the problem is in a company, you typically never have enough engineers to support the needs of the business, right? And so as a result, engineers would be allocated to the most important projects in a company. And then the other ones, they get self-service support, which typically means no support at all.
Yeah.
And because they have no support, they will not embark on a fancy new tool, right? They will revert to what they know, which is Excel. So that's what I observed, at least.
Yeah, got it. So that's one part of your tool. You, instead of coming up with alternatives for Excel, you really embrace Excel as the tool for analysts, and you augment it in a way, right?
Yeah, exactly. So the idea behind River Solutions now is already iteration number 3, let's say. In other iterations, I was really on this idea of getting people out of Excel. And ultimately, someday somebody told me very blankly, look, in my company, we're never going to drop Excel, right? Especially in my team. So don't try to have a switch to another tool. And then I was like, yeah, that actually makes sense, right? I need to meet them where they are, which is kind of part of the basics of product management. But still, Excel is a tech platform in itself, right? So developing on Excel is not very easy.
Yeah. No, absolutely not. So, but maybe now that we're there, you say, okay, so you build something in Excel as an add-on to Excel. Can you explain to the audience what River Solutions does?
Yeah. So River Solutions, there's 2 objectives. It's to build models that are both explainable and reliable.
Yeah.
And as a subtitle, you can do that in Excel in a way, right? But what's important is the end goal, right? You have a model that you can explain to your boss, to an expert, and you have something that's reliable. So it means that not only it does what it claims it does, right? So it's accurate, but also it prevents future mistakes that you don't even know about it yet. And this happens very frequently if you build a model with a specific data set. And then later you're like, oh, I want to update it. I want to put this refreshed data set in it. And then you have, small differences that make your model break in the best cases. And in the worst cases, you have silent errors that corrupt your insights and you don't even realize it.
And so for the people listening, when you talk about model, you mean it's logic that you apply on a data set. Is that a model, or what is a model to you?
Yeah, so a model is, in generic terms, is when you try to translate some knowledge about like a real world system into a representation with data, right, and calculations, because you want to extract some insights about that system, right? So typically you do that in the corporate world. Imagine a simple model. You have a project, right? And let's imagine to launch a new product. So you need to create a forecasting model of what the future could look like for that product. So you'll get data about the market, about the costs of your company, and then you will mix all that in a model. And the output is different scenarios about, how that product can be successful or not. Yeah. So that's typically what you want to achieve.
That's a model. And you said you want to do two things with models, make it explainable and reliable, right?
Yeah.
And so I can definitely attest to models being built in Excel are not explainable. It's mostly reverse engineering that you have to do of a whole bunch of formulas across like 100 different tabs. How does your tool help in making it explainable?
Yeah. So the first thing is you don't build the model using formulas like in Excel. You build it visually. So you can think of it as a sort of flow chart, right? So you have blocks that represent transformations, data transformations, and you connect them with arrows. And this is both the representation of the model and the interactive element of it, right? So it's both controlling what the model calculates, and it's also your self-contained documentation. Yeah. So you can zoom out, zoom in. You see sort of it's called a model map. And so if I want to explain my model to you, I would just open my laptop, I would open the model map and lead you through these different steps.
Yeah. And that's the idea comes from, I guess, things like Alteryx or Nime or something like that. Or you got some inspiration from that side.
Yeah, exactly. It's called, flow-based programming in general. So you put like a layer of abstraction on top of some, code or some engine, right? And then the two tools you mentioned are inspirations, but then there's many other that follow the same principles, right? The point is like a visual representation of model is a much better fit for the human mind than text.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially if the text is spread out over 10 different tabs, right?
Yeah, exactly. So there you have only one map, and the data can be spread across multiple tabs, but at least you have one description of the model.
All right. And so that helps in making models explainable. How can you make them more reliable?
So more reliable, it's mostly two things. The first one is getting rid of formulas. So if you think of a VLOOKUP, which is, for our listeners familiar with Excel, there's like 4 types of errors you can make in configuring a VLOOKUP, which is like the most used formula in the world. And that would lead to silent errors, right? So in River, you configure a lookup using a point and click interface. You just drop downs and select the columns you want to match, and that's it, right? So you get rid of potential errors. You speed up the work of analysts who doesn't have to look up on Google, how do you write a VLOOKUP? Yeah. So that's one thing. So get rid of formulas. And the second one is out-of-the-box automated quality checks. And this is really, I think, something distinctive because I haven't seen that anywhere. If you have a data table, just with the click of a button, you can enable checks that verify that there's no missing data, that there's no duplicate values, for instance. Or if you do a lookup, you can enable checks that ensure that the keys match, there's no data that is lost in the process.
That's actually really nice. As an engineer, we often do those kinds of checks. Well, in engineering tools, like in dbt, it's built in, for instance, in Python, you can do them. And in fact, definitely it's the case that if you don't do them, you have a lot of silent errors.
Yeah.
And then you think, well, your model is running in production because everything is green, but actually the data it produces is shady.
Yep.
So I like the idea that you brought in, if you will, some engineering best practices into the Excel world.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's actually a conscious choice to borrow some ideas from there. So, tests, right? They're like a bit of equivalent of these data quality checks. But also the fact that documentation should be in the code itself, right? So what you see is the analyst building Excel models. Typically at the end of a project, they're like, okay, now I need to hand this over to someone else. So I'm going to build the documentation. And they spend 2 days in a row writing a PowerPoint or Word file and manually creating flowcharts to explain the models. And I didn't want that. I wanted the documentation to be embedded in the model itself.
Yeah, super cool. Okay, so you've built this add-in in Excel that makes your models more readable, more reliable, more explainable. Why does it matter?
So it matters on multiple fronts, but so I guess you can look at it at 2 levels, right? The individuals building the models, the time that is wasted every year with analysts tracing back Excel formulas to find where does that error come from. If they're lucky that there is an error, right? As we said, the science errors. So that's horrible, right? Like a huge amount, millions of hours probably. So it's really annoying. It creates frustration, and I think it's distracting, slowing people down essentially.
Yeah.
And then at the organizational level, it's just creating more risk, right? So you have, imagine, you're making a 100 million decision on that Excel model. If there's silent errors, if there's any mistake in there, it can have terrible consequences. And there have been a lot of high-profile mistakes in Excel that have been publicized as well. So that's the two main areas of, or the 2 main consequences from this problem.
Maybe with your background as a consultant, it's hard to put a number on that, I guess, but how often or how likely is it that your model contains errors or mistakes?
It's a controversial question, right?
Well, not in your consulting work, but in other consulting work.
Yeah. Well, I think in, consulting firms in particular, they're so worried about, they want to do like a perfect job for their clients, right? But they also have limited time, and I think they put all the measures in place to do quality checks, right? So the manager is going to review thoroughly. In some companies, they have like a dedicated kind of department that looks over the Excel files.
Oh, really?
But they can never, they also have a limited time, right? Yeah. So typically in an Excel file, you do sanity checks. So you check that the sum of this column at this point in the model is equal to the model somewhere else.
Yeah.
So there can be no errors, as you can see, right? But then if you update the data, then errors will appear because the data has changed. And so, so my gut tells me, probably 95% of the time there is an error somewhere, or there's something that the analyst hasn't thought of that will lead to future errors.
Got it. But you talked a bit about the analysts and managers and consulting firms. Who are you targeting with this solution?
Yeah, so consulting is, has this structure where the models are typically built by more junior profiles, right? Analysts, associates. The title changes a little bit, but that's so they spend 2, 3, 4 years building models, among other things, and then they move on and they switch to another job. So definitely helping them free up more time to learn the trade, right, is important. In other companies, I think it's a little bit different. You'll have more different profiles doing modeling, right? But then you would finally, sometimes you'll find people that are the Excel gurus of their department or their company, right? And it's not necessarily that they really wanted to become an Excel guru, but they just happen to be the most knowledgeable person. And so everybody calls them all the time. I'm not sure they're super happy about that, right? And so, yeah.
Yeah.
So these are the people that would be the users of River. And then I thought of the manager, right? The manager needs to be able to use River as well. And so the features that we use is the model map to read the model. And there's other features that are on the roadmap, like an audit report. So if you have data quality checks, you can also create an audit report out of that and have an assessment of the quality.
Good. Do you also see River meeting limits at some point, meaning that when would you decide to say, okay, River has accelerated you if you were in Excel and has augmented you, but at some point now River is not the right solution anymore and you need to go to other solutions?
Well, yeah, I think there's two cases. I mean, River is meant to be a tool to develop model, let's say on your desktop computer, right? So if now the model becomes part of a production environment and you need to feed it like real-time data, then you need a server environment, and River is at the moment at least not the right tool, right?
Yeah.
The other case is if you really need to do like really fancy data transformations, machine learning stuff. River provides you a library of components that have a certain level of abstraction. So it's like Lego bricks, right? That click together. Yeah. But now, if you need like a very specific shape of Lego brick that's not in River, you cannot have it, right? So then you need to switch to some other technology.
Yeah, so it becomes very advanced, or you want to put it in automated way in production, so it runs every night based on new data coming in. Then River is not.
Yeah, no, not at the moment, right? If it's widely successful and there's other ideas around that, why not? But at the moment,
it brings me a bit to timing, because you've been a professional for quite a long time. You've been working with Excel for quite a long time, I guess. You've been involved with Excel at least. Why now? Why did you decide to make the jump now?
So it was a combination of factors, right? But so as I said earlier, I've observed the problems for many years, and I had some ideas about how to solve that problem. But then I always thought that it was too complex to develop, in particular for the front end part of such a tool, which needs to be highly interactive if you want it to be usable and easy to use, let's say, for the user. And then I met like really good engineers who showed me that it was actually not that hard, right? They gave me some tips about the architecture, the technology in general of the solution, and that really was the last piece of the puzzle, right? And then I was like, this is actually possible, right? And then I was like, okay, if I'm not doing it now, it's probably going to be never. So yeah, here I am.
So you made the jump to just build the first prototype yourself, maybe with some help, but it's really
yeah, exactly. So with help from freelance developers, and then of course Copilot, ubiquitous coding Copilot that helps me quite a lot as well.
How did it help you?
So in the beginning, as I said, I'm not a computer engineer initially, right? So I had good knowledge, but not specifically in the technology that I'm using, which is C#. And so it definitely helped me learn the coding patterns, things that are not necessarily so obvious on Stack Overflow, right? And so in the beginning, I was asking it, hey, can you structure this? I'm trying to do this, please modify the application so that it does this. And then I learned the patterns, and then I also learned where I was doing things wrong. And yeah, so that's how I used it in the begining. And now I'm using it a bit less, I guess, because I'm better.
If you look into other solutions than Copilot, because there's things like Cloud Code out there and stuff like that, if you experience
but I'm using like the GitHub Copilot. So in GitHub Copilot with the Pro version, you have access to multiple models. So I tried the GPT models, Claude, Gemini, a couple of them.
Becoming a professional.
yeah, that's the goal.
But then actually, I could turn that around. I mean, AI has clearly accelerated you, and it's great to hear. At the same time, if I hear your story about River Solutions accelerating business analysts, won't AI replace River in a couple of years? Because the business analyst can just ask questions to AI, and AI will solve it for them, right?
Yeah, and it's maybe the question I guess the most often about River, right? But so here's how I think about it, right? You need to support important business decisions. The models that support that need to be transparent, right? This is why we have explainability. It's not just so that there is no mistake, right? It's also because the model in itself, it's a core piece of the trust in the project that you're trying to run. There's like terrible cases, let's say, where after having run like a long consulting project to define a transformation program in a company, somebody finds an error in the Excel file, and then all of a sudden, people start doubting the rationale, and you have to talk to everyone again to convince them. So that's important. So the models need to be transparent because of that. If you have the analyst who have the idea of the model in their mind, try to do something deterministic. And for that, they use a copilot or an LLM, which is a statistical engine.
Mm-hmm.
It's not going to work, right? It's going to produce results that are not reliable, not always the same. So I think for advanced models, it's not going to change like the face of the world. Now, the copilots they're developing for Excel at the moment, the more advanced copilots, they will help the junior and the beginners in Excel get faster to expert, not expert, maybe intermediate proficiency in Excel. A little bit like I did with C#, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, maybe one day you could write a copilot for River, no?
Yeah, it's actually a good point, right? Like River, in a way, in River, you have a description of your model in terms of transformations and connections. So it's a structure that would be much easier to understand for an LLM than trying to read an Excel file, all the cells, right? And trying to infer what the user wants to do. So, yeah.
Yeah, if it's easier for a human to understand, it's also easier for an LLM to understand.
It should, right? Because it's more structured in general. And so... Yeah.
Of course, I mean, playing devil's advocate, you can make horrible models in any technology, including River, right?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
But if you structure it a bit, it can definitely help LLMs in understanding what you're trying to do.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, we see something similar in databases where, if you heard this notion of a semantic layer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Semantic layers were hot 20 years ago. And then they kind of faded away. I thought about that, but now they're making a comeback for exactly that reason. Because if you open any data warehouse and you see 1,000 tables in columns with very cryptic names, you as a human don't know what they mean, but so the LLM also doesn't know what it means, right? So it can't really help you. But if you structure it in dimensions and metrics and whatnot, and you document it a bit, it becomes easier for humans. And that's the semantic layer. It becomes easier for humans. Also becomes easier for LLMs, so it becomes easier to use chatbots to talk to your data, right? So.
Yeah, exactly. I actually borrowed one of the concepts there, which is the idea of a dimension. I call it dimension in River. It's slightly different concept, but the idea is it's a description of the structure of your data. All right. And you use that to make it visible that you're joining this table with this other table, and this one has a bigger, finer granularity. And so, this is the resulting data table is different.
So you're taking all the things that we're learning in data engineering and you're putting it in a...
Yeah, stealing them.
I didn't say, I was thinking steal, but I didn't say it. All right. But if I want to try out River tomorrow, can you walk me through what is the experience of a user using River?
So River is packaged as an Excel add-in, right? So it's actually very simple to install. You just get a download link, and it installs on Excel on your computer. Small footnote: it's for Windows only.
What's that?
Yeah, it's for due to technology reasons, right? I don't know if you want to get into details of that, but
there is an Excel for Mac, right?
Yep. Yeah.
It's a different platform.
Yeah, it's a different technology for developing the add-ins.
Got it.
And it's not yet super mature. At least that was my impression. So it was a faster route to market to use the more established technology, but then it's limited to Windows. But given my, target customer in organizations, it makes sense.
Yeah, probably 90% of your target audience has a Windows laptop, right?
Yeah, I guess so. We'll see, right? We'll see if people write and say, hey, when is the Mac version coming online? So then, you install that plugin. It's going to automatically upgrade with every release. And then the way it looks like, it has a few extra panels in Excel that you can close. But one is the model map, where you will design your model. You have in the ribbon, you have the list of components you can use. And then when you click on a block on your model map, another panel allows you to configure it.
And so if I add a block or change a transformation or something, do I see a live update of what the impact is on my data?
Yeah, everything is interactive because I wanted to match the Excel experience, right? Where you change anything, everything recalculates. When you have like a super big model, that may become difficult, right? Because like every recalculation is going to take time. But for regular size models, you get immediate feedback.
Yeah, that's really nice. I told you before I compared a bit to the DBT of the Excel world. But in DBT, if you add a model or change a model, well, you need to run the pipeline, and only then you get to get like the live results on your data. But the cool thing here is indeed you showed me it's very interactive. You change a box and you see the result. Well, no, that's not what I want. You tweak a bit. You can do very, very quick iterations that way.
Yeah, exactly. And also, we spent quite some time on the error messages as well to try to make them explicit for the user. Also have the error close to where it should be corrected. Yeah,
cool. But so if you look at your target audience, the business analyst or the data analyst, how is their job changing? And in a way, do you see River as a threat to them? And let me explain, because I said before, I think River is a bit like the DBT of the Excel world, and maybe that's not the right analogy, but when we started Dataminded, building data pipelines and moving data from left to right, you need a serious engineering skill. So you need Scala or Java and Spark and manually customizing Hadoop clusters. You need to be an expert engineer to do that. These days with DBT, well, it's a lot easier. You write some SQL logic and you do DBT run and it's there. And some of the engineers really love that because, well, we get quicker results. Some engineers are like, yeah, no, but I'm the Scala expert who writes Spark code and stuff, right? So what do you think of the job of a data analyst? How is it evolving, and is River a threat to them?
Yeah, well, so I think the role should evolve, right? Because at the moment, if you think those analysts, they spend a lot of time debugging formulas, right, and their models in general. Estimation that still needs to be proven is that you can save 50% of the time that you spend on the whole activity surrounding the model, right? Like designing it, building it, debugging, explaining it, right? With River, you could squeeze that down by 50%. And the idea is I would love for the analyst to spend time on building their domain knowledge or talk to their clients in consulting or interpret the insights, but not on debugging formulas, right? So I think the role of the analyst should evolve to go towards that. I think River puts the analyst at the center, right? An example is in River, there's not only data transformations you can do, but there's slightly higher level components. So for instance, to manage the assumptions and the scenarios, which is like a typical thing you build in an Excel model, there's components that are pre-configured for that, right? So the analyst doesn't need to build the details. It's already there. So their role changes from an Excel coder into someone who designs the model, explains it to an expert, validates, and then runs it, but with more confidence. So I think it should reinforce the role of the analyst, if anything.
So in a way, can I say the metric for success of River is that that an analyst spends less time per problem domain in Excel, like because it accelerates you in Excel. So the less time it spends in Excel, the more time it talks to its peers, its business users, whatever, the better.
Yeah, absolutely. And then from the perspective of the managers who typically are the ultimate responsible for the quality, right? For them, it's also less stress, right, and worry, because they can spend as much time as they want looking over the shoulder of the analyst to try to validate their Excel models. They are never fully confident, right?
Yeah.
So with River, I hope their lives can improve as well, right? A ripple effect from that.
All right. And how do you see this as a bit predicting the future? It's will always be way off target, but how do you see this evolving in the future? How do you see this being different a year or 2 years from now?
Good question, right? So first, it would need to grow a community, I think, right? Because ultimately, I'm not hiding the fact that it's a different way to create a model, right? You're still in Excel, it helps. But you're doing it in a different way. So I think people need to adopt that new way, talk to their, colleagues and say, hey, look how it's better. And then the community would grow, and to have that validation that it's actually saving the 50% time, right?
Yeah.
So I think if I look at the year ahead, it's probably the focus for River, right? It's to fully deploy the value proposition for the analysts, and then later, if that works, I mentioned a few ideas like cloud versions of River, AI enabled versions. Could go in that way. We could also think about the features that would be helpful for companies. For instance, connect to internal data sources, data lakes, ERP systems to make the work of analysts even faster. So this roadmap with 250 ideas.
Well, I can definitely attest to that last idea, because what makes us engineers usually nervous, it's not so much the fact that models are wrong in Excel, but there's a lot of downloads to Excel. And then, like for us, I call that dark data, because it's data that we don't manage or control anymore. And so it might end up in a mailbox, or it might end up in a shared drive, or I don't know where it ends up. So if you have this feature of, well, you are still in Excel, but instead of storing all the data in Excel, you connect to the data warehouse.
Yep.
To get the latest data from there and run the models on that. That would make us sleep better at night, I think. All right. A question I always ask our guests is, and I don't think we prepared this one, so it's going to be a
okay
curveball. But what is something that you know today that you didn't know when you started your career? Something about data, I mean.
Well, it's maybe a bit obvious, right? But the fact that when you try to get people to change, in this case, to use a new tool, software is the easy part, right? Now you have to convince people that there is an alternative approach, to teach them the new tool, to avoid them reverting back to the old ways. And I think I know better now that this is really the actual challenge, right?
Change management in a way.
Yeah, exactly. So it's the human side of things, which is a good thing as well, I think.
Yeah. All right, cool. With that, Amaury, I'd like to thank you to come on the podcast. Wish you best of luck with River.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much.
Cool.